Well, Eric, getting things kicked off here this week. I see you're live from your vehicle this morning, so appreciate you jumping on it quickly as we get things kind of rolling here for what the weather could kind of shape up to be as we're moving through November here now. We missed getting a conversation in last week just with scheduling, so I think this is a good kind of refresher for, kind of what to expect here moving forward because last week it seemed like we got a decent amount of precipitation, turning a little bit drier here this week. What could we expect here as we're looking past harvest and more towards this winter season when we're trying to replenish a lot of soil moisture reserves that we've kind of been seeing on the deficit side of things for quite a while now?
Yeah, I mean, you can see around me, there's a lot of blue sky. And where I am here, I'm at Chicago here just now, and it's going to be like this for most of the week. But take a look at this map. Can you see there's kind of this trajectory coming out of the Canadian prairie through the northern plains into the Great Lakes where there might be some snow? And it's not just the European model that sees it. This is the new artificial intelligence forecasting model. So I'm talking like Fargo, Grand Forks, Minneapolis, Madison, maybe Detroit maybe gets in on some of this. There's snow coming out of the prairie into that area. And even the GFS has something coming through there. So that means this temperature pattern could be flipping around quite a bit. Now, I'm going to keep going on the snow because it's the first time I've started talking about snow in these places. And snow in November can be good snow because when that snow melts, because it probably will melt before we get fully into December, January, you get to keep some of that moisture. So to see the probabilities here over an inch of getting an inch, up to 80, 90, 100% in places, I like that. I mean, it looks like it's going to bring in some moisture into this area. Now, the other big story is this map. Now, take a look at this. This is mid-November to mid-December. And there's no doubt about it that the newest model runs have started to bring in much, much better flow, possibly toward the end of this month, but lasting through much of December, meaning that we could get a good push at moisture to help relieve some of the ongoing drought issues going fully into winter. But I don't expect these temperatures to get settled, right? Next 5 days, oh, all the mild air floods back in. Then you take a look out there and go, well, what about day 5 through 10? Look at the cold air getting funneled right through this corridor, through the Midwest, Great Lakes, Northeast, while the West goes back over mild. We continue to see that just in all of our models. Like here's the GFS, day 5 through 10. There's going to be some push of colder air coming into the series supporting that snow. And even the AI model, I don't even say even the AI model, but the AI model is very aggressive on how cold it can get during that time frame as well as heat builds into the west. But Dawson, this is important. This means we're going to have flow doing that. Okay. I would much prefer flow coming in like this. That's the wet setup. You want southwest flow, not northwest flow. So what you end up getting out of this are clipper systems. And as you can see from this 14-day forecast, yeah, the west is wet. The Canadian prairie is wet and snowy. But have a look down here in the lower Mississippi River Valley, the Red River Valley, the Ozarks, the southeast. That area still struggles to see plenty of moisture in this pattern. Now, as of late, we've seen some of these areas pick up some moisture, but look at the red on this map. That's where your holes are located. And as you mentioned, the soil moisture problems throughout the primary corn and soybean belt are real. You can see the deficits. So, I mean, I want nothing more than for a, hate to say it, but a super active end of November and start to December. It's terrible for holiday travel. It's terrible for our just enjoying that time of year. But man, I want to talk next month, or it's not next month, next year in May about this not still being there. So that's why I'm concerned about it. Now, I want to show you the systems as they come through here. I'm going to move you out of the way. There we go. And as we watch this going forward, watch the trajectory on the systems. Do you see how they're coming out of the northern US and diving into the Great Lakes, then moving east? I'll go backward. You can sometimes see it better if you go backwards versus forwards. That trajectory means that we're not going to get the full grab on the moisture out of the Gulf, which is why when you look at the 10-day total forecast, there's a big section of the plains in the Midwest that doesn't see a lot of moisture. And it's not just the European that sees it, the GFS is very similar. So it's important to note that you got to see this map as well. I got excited about snow and some moisture, but everywhere that you see color shading on this map, now this is crazy. This is 10-day probability of staying under 1/10 of an inch. And that's a lot of dryness from the southwest through the Four Corner states into the plains and even parts of the southeast. Now, as we look out there into week 2, does anything start to get me excited? Well, some of the European model updates begin to break. See all this business down here in California and Arizona? That could be the beginning of getting the flow to come back, which I think toward the end of September, or excuse me, I'm way off on my months now. End of November could be a reality. But one thing that will accompany all of this, Dawson, is wind. Like, look at the wind forecast just over the next 5 days. We've got strong winds returning now after what was a very benign and almost boring end of summer and start of fall with respect to winds. Temperatures are also going to fluctuate a lot. That's our 5 day frost or 7 day frost map. But if you take a look at how the temperatures are going to evolve, like watch the heat coming into the plains. Look at Tuesday's temperatures coming off the front range touching 80. And then we get into Wednesday, they drop 20 degrees. They come back up 10 degrees. And then you see toward the end of the time period, they're way back down in the 50s. So a nice 30-degree swing in only high temperatures while the Great Lakes into the Northeast really start to cool off, supporting that snow. But I'll just say this, don't get set on any temperature pattern. There's your next 5 days. That's day 5 through 10, which we saw at the beginning of our recording today. And then watch this, day 10 through 15, cold air moves east, mild air comes back. That kind of roller coaster ride is very common for this time of year. But what it signals, Dawson, is that the pattern's doing something other than just getting stuck and not changing. And I like that. That's what we need to do to break the drought situation we're in right now.
So I guess what factors are you still looking at for a lot of this too? Because I mean, we're looking at a potential on-off pattern that you typically have liked in the past of,
Yeah.
get some precipitation, get a little bit of break. It's kind of nice when you're with any season that we're in, whether it's planting, harvest, kind of that waiting period. What signals are you waiting it for especially as we move towards those longer ranges when we're just looking at potentially filling in a lot of these deficits?
Yeah. So let me show you this first. I'll tell you what the Climate Prediction Center is looking at. This is their new forecast that goes out all the way through November. This is going to be a concern all winter long going into next spring. How much of the Sun Belt, Cotton Belt, Southeast stays drier? Okay. That's their November outlook. Remember, though, the European model tries to wipe some of that out in December. We need the European model to be right. We need this model to be right. But I'm telling you, there's still going to be lingering risk in this area for things being drier. And that's going to be a concern all the way till next spring. If that area isn't revived from its drought pressures by next March and April, we've got to have a talk. Until then, it's just wait, wait, wait. Let's see. Let's see if it fills in at some point. Let's see. Let's be patient because it can fill in a hurry. But if it doesn't, we got to watch this carefully. But the big factors right now is that we've got La Nina, which we've talked extensively about. We have this feature over in the Indian Ocean called the negative phase of the IOD, Indian Ocean Dipole. It's a El Nino, La Nina like thing in the Indian Ocean. We've got one in the Atlantic as well. Okay. Now here's what I did. I want to show you this. Right now, the Indian Ocean Dipole is strongly negative. And in December's, look at all this cold air historically when the IOD was negative was let out of Canada. There's more to it. What about La Nina? Well, look at December's when there was a weak La Nina like we have. Guess what? Cold air came out. The reason I'm stressing this is this takes the jet stream pattern and moves it south, meaning more of the US ag belts are in the flow, which they would need to be in to get the moisture. And that's why when you look out there and say, well, what about, November to December when the IOD is negative? Well, we tend to be wetter across the northern tier, but do you just notice how there's no really, really strong correlation here, no strong anomalies? The strongest are down in South America, which we need to talk about next, because if you look at the La Nina correlation, it's still very dry southern Brazil, wet from the eastern to the center west regions. While the North American pattern, yeah, you could say that, boy, we've got better flow across the northern tier of the US coast to coast, but drier south. I know we've worried about that, but it's not as strong as the signal as elsewhere around the world. And I think we just have to consider that as we start to think about what South America is going to see.
Right, too. So quickly before we get to South America is kind of the synopsis of not having those stronger signals is that obviously we try to maybe get some signals with the longer range models, but don't always take it with the greatest salt. So it's just this pattern just doesn't seem set in stone of one way or the other.
It doesn't, but I just think that there's better evidence that we're going to tap into some cold air. I'm talking like not just cold because it's December, but like real cold air. And what
Mhm.
we worry about is if you bring in the cold air early and it just freezes up the soils in the Dakotas, Minnesota, maybe parts of Nebraska, northern Iowa, Wisconsin. So if you freeze those up, any drought that was frozen into it is there. It's not going to go away. And so I want to be aware of the risk of seeing that cold air get in place. Other than that, I think we're just going to be in for I think it's going to be an active winter, Dawson. I don't have any other evidence to tell you that with a La Nina coming in, the negative Indian Ocean dipole, I think it's going to be okay. Let me rephrase that. It's fun for me because there's something to talk about every week. It's not boring and stuck, but it could be a bit just annoying to live through that heading into this 2026 growing season.
But just expect some sort of activity moving forward for that time
Yes,
period.
it's not stuck, and that's what I'm
Yeah,
happy about.
yeah. So let's talk about South America then. You're talking about a little bit of progress that we've been seeing here with them is trying to identify how their monsoon season has been going. We're kind of still in that. What's the latest down there as we're still trying to identify what their crop could shape it up to be over the next couple of months?
Well, we've arrived at the end of October at the same place roughly as we were a year ago, but we got there differently. Last year was major delays early, then they picked up pace mid-month. This year was major pace early, then they slowed down mid-month. So I want to know how much of the crop's going to have to be replanted. I also want to just look at the moisture signals over the last month and realize, Goiás, Tocantins, Mato Grosso, Minas Gerais, these are dry areas compared to normal. And as we look out there at the forecast, the models are split. I mean, the Europeans like, yeah, give them everything they need to make it a great start to the season. The GFS is like, nope, make it very dry, Mato Grosso, Tocantins, these very productive growing areas. And that same problem continues all the way out into the longer range. I mean, this goes all out to December 7th. Look at how wet the European model is here and dry it is in southern Brazil, pockets of it, but Argentina. Now, watch this. This is the newest GFS. It is very dry north and west through Paraguay, all the way down to Argentina over that same time frame. Many of us are sitting there going, well, I can make a case for both. And I don't know what way to call it. All I know right now is last week I met with a group of Brazilian growers that were here in town, plus some folks from Nutrien, and they're looking at this going, all right, we're moving enough. We think if we get decent rains, this is going to be a great start to the crop. But they echoed the same thing we always think about. Can Brazil out acre its potential weather problems? And that's the answer. That's the question we're always going to search the answer for every growing season. And this one's no exception.
As I say, earlier in the season when they were kicking off that planting, you were kind of
Yeah.
thinking with that pace that we could see some even stronger plantings than what, many people were initially expecting. Is that kind of still the expectation just because we're having that cautious optimism, it sounds like, from those producers?
Yes, we are. I would just say this too. I mean, I don't know how many years I've been on your show, Dawson, but like, I favor the European model, and it's a good performer. But I'll say this: the European model had been predicting above average precip for October for a while, and then you look at the data, and it's off. It was too wet. But if you look at this map right here, even if this is too wet and it lands on normal December, November, December rains are fantastic for Brazil. So I don't know. I am never going to call a weather problem in Brazil until the signals are like crystal clear.
Yeah, they still got a ways for development to go too. So, I mean, we're going to be watching these closely moving forward, kind of identifying if there could potentially be a problem. But yeah, going back to the US, going to be looking for some activity moving forward, just with a lot of the swings in temperatures specifically. But I think it'll be safe to say to end it right there, and we'll be looking for latest updates moving forward. But always appreciate your insights, Eric.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Dawson.